happen myself. I just did a little research and here we are. Secondly, some viewers may find this video very disturbing. With that being said, viewer discretion is definitely advised. I've warned you, so if you decide to stay at this point, it's on you. Okay, let's get started. So, the first story that I found rather interesting is the story surrounding the historic Trish House. The Trish House is a mansion located in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. It was built back in 1837 for a doctor, Dr. John R. Trish, and his wife Sarah, whom he had married about 2 years prior. Dr. Trish was apparently very well known for his gambling and his heavy drinking habits. Sadly, one night in 1867, after having a few too many drinks, Dr. Trish allegedly lost his footing and he fell down the stairway in his home, which led to his death. After his death, it is said that his wife Sarah became obsessed with planning his funeral. She wanted to make sure that it was a big deal. She made it this huge, elaborate event, right? At the funeral, she placed lit candles around her husband's casket. Afterward, she kept those candles and she told her family that whenever she passed away, she wanted those very same candles to be lit at her funeral as well. This was important to her and she made sure that her family knew it. So Sarah lived in the Trish House until her passing in 1884. When she passed away, her family did their very best to honor her wishes. They looked all over the Trish House for those candles that she wanted lit at her funeral, but they couldn't find them anywhere. So they just had to go on with Sarah's funeral without them. It is believed that this really upset Sarah, and as a result, her spirit is not at rest at all. The Trish House is now believed to be haunted, and Sarah is supposedly responsible for the hauntings. She apparently just couldn't get over the candle situation, so yeah. But something I found interesting, they say that there have been multiple reports of fires happening at the Trish House over the years, but whenever the fire department arrives on the scene, there is no sign of fire being present at all. People believe that these are phantom fires set by Sarah using the lost candles that she wanted lit at her funeral. Isn't that creepy? Oh, by the way, if you guys live in Alabama or if you're just familiar with it, let me know if you know about any of the stories or if you know any more on them. I would love to know. Now, let's talk about the legend of Bill Skeeto's Hole. So, back in 1864, there was a Civil War soldier named William Skeeto. He went by Bill Skeeto, just so you know. While at war, Bill got word that his wife was very, very sick, so he wanted to leave so that he could go check on her. I'm really not sure how it all works as if it was never filled in the first place. People believe that the spirit of Bill Skeeto continues to swing right there in that same spot, since his feet would be able to touch whatever the hole is filled with as he sways. It caused the hole to be cleared out every day, kind of like if you were swaying a brush over the hole and it's kind of sweeping everything out. No matter what they did, the hole would always end up empty, and it actually stayed empty for well over 100 years. Interesting, right? I actually read that the hole was only destroyed in 1990. This is when let me see if I get this right, Choctawhatchee River flood happened. Then get this, apparently the 6 men who were involved in Bill's hanging, they all died very mysterious deaths. One was struck by lightning, another was riding his horse when a tree limb struck him in the head and killed him shortly after Bill died. One was found dead in a swamp, but we don't actually know the cause. Then another was riding his mule when all of a sudden the mule just threw him off, killing him. They say that the mule had actually never done anything like that before, so it was rather strange. But anyway, that's the legend of Bill Skeeto and the hole that couldn't be filled. Did any of you guys actually see this hole before it was destroyed by the flood? Or have you ever visited Bill Skeeto's grave? Let me know in the comments. On one rainy night in Lynn, Alabama, a teenage girl had just left her prom and she had gotten a ride home from her boyfriend, right? As they drove down Highway 5 to get to her house, the couple ended up getting into an argument, so the girl decided to just get out of the truck and walk the rest of the way home. Well, her body was actually found the next morning in a ditch near where she had gotten out of the truck. It was clear that she had been run over and killed by what appeared to be an 18-wheeler. Hit and run. Now, it is said that if you drive an 18-wheeler on a rainy night down Highway 5, it's very likely that you will encounter this young lady. She's known to climb up on the side of 18-wheelers who are driving down this highway. She climbs up and looks inside in search of the driver who was driving the truck that killed her years back. There have actually been several real reports of truck drivers seeing this young lady as they drive down Highway 5. I don't know about y'all, but I would completely poop my pants if that ever happened to me, because what? Imagine that you're just driving a big truck and then all of a sudden you look over and there's a whole ghostly lady looking back at you. That's just too much for me, okay? Luckily, I don't drive trucks. I still don't think I want to ride down that highway though. So there is a national historic landmark in Birmingham, Alabama called SLO Furnaces. It's a museum now, but obviously whenever it first came about, it was an actual iron or steel company. I really don't know the ins and outs, but from what I understand, they basically took coal and ore, melted it all down to this hot molten lava in these giant furnaces, and what they would end up with is steel, hard steel. That makes sense, right? Anyway, so SLO Furnaces opened back in 1881, just 10 years after the city of Birmingham was founded. SLO Furnaces was really a pretty dangerous place to work at, but apparently it was also a very sought after job because at that time it was pretty new, pretty fresh place. It was kind of advanced for that time, and even though this place was kind of the place that you wanted to work at back then, the working conditions honestly weren't good at all. It was normal for employees very strong, so once it got a hold of him, he couldn't just break himself free. As the gears turned, it pulled him in more and more, crushing him to death. There was really nothing that the co-workers could do to help him either. If they tried, they would have potentially lost their lives as well. So all they could do was sit there and watch in horror as whatever happened. You had to make sure you were very careful working here, and sometimes even that wasn't enough. Okay, that was just a little background so that you could kind of get a feel of the place itself first. Now, let's talk about old Mr. Slag. Slag was a supervisor over the graveyard shift at SLO Furnaces, right? Not the nice kind of supervisor. Slag was allegedly very harsh and cruel towards his employees. They say that he would belittle them a lot, push them to work super hard so that he could look good in front of his own bosses. He would even force his employees to do very dangerous things while on the job. He was just super hard on them simply because he could be. It's like they were always under so much pressure because Slag was always on their necks, you know. Horrible. During Slag's time there, approximately 50 of his employees lost their lives and several others were disabled to the point where they couldn't work anymore. They say that more people died while working under Slag than at any other point in time at SLO Furnaces. Some people believe that many of these deaths and accidents may not have been accidents at all. A lot of people believe that Slag would purposely push his employees to death. And I don't know if he literally pushed them to their deaths or if he made them do something super dangerous that he knew for a fact would potentially kill them. But yes, people believe he's to blame. Well, in 1906, Slag was reportedly at the very top of one of the tallest furnaces there, and they say he became dizzy from the fumes that was coming from the furnace. He allegedly lost his footing and ended up falling all the way down right into this hot molten lava, which obviously killed him. That's what they say happened, but others say that his employees pushed him in there because they were tired of him treating them so cruelly. Who knows? Now, with all of that death and abuse and who knows what else that went on in that place, there have been quite a few reports of paranormal activity there over the years. They say that you can still hear echoes of the ruckus that you would have heard on a regular working day there at SLO Furnaces. You can also hear screams of agony as if people are falling into this molten iron. Apparitions have been seen on the property. Some people have reported the feeling of being shoved by someone who is not there. They say that you can also feel the very dark presence of Mr. Slag, or sometimes you can even hear him screaming, "Get back to work." Yeah, don't worry about it, sweetheart. I want to tell you about this story that I heard about a long time ago. It's kind of sad in a way, but it really creeped me out. It's the story of dead Darius. I tried to look it up online to see if there were any other details that I can find that I didn't already know, but there's literally not much information on this at all. So the story goes that back in the 1950s or 60s, we don't know for sure, this little boy actually killed, like not being hit by a car, but like murdered. I'm not real sure about that, but the mother was absolutely distraught after her baby, her son, her only child, passed away. And she could not fathom having him buried somewhere and away from her, right? So instead of doing like the traditional burial for her son, she allegedly got him stuffed. She got his body stuffed and she kept him there with her in her home. Apparently, when her son was alive, he loved being outdoors. So they say that she would sit his body outside on the porch every day. Actually, the picture I showed you at the beginning of the story, that's actually what he looked like. In that picture, he was not alive. That was his stuffed body. That sent chills down your spine, right? I know, me too. But yeah, so the mother, she would take him outside every day, and then at night she would bring him back in. She would change his clothes every day before taking him back out. If it was raining outside, she would dress him in a raincoat, and he would just sit there on the porch for everybody to see as they passed by the house. They say that children were always terrified to pass by the house as they were on their way to school. I mean, this was probably one of their classmates, and all of a sudden you hear that he passed away, but then his body is sitting on the porch. Totally get it. Personally, I can't imagine passing by anyone's house and seeing that. That would be very disturbing to me, especially knowing the story behind what I'm seeing. So apparently the mother did this for the remainder of her life, and after she passed away, the little boy's body was nowhere to be found. No one ever found it, and that was that. Now, some people claim that this is only an urban legend and it's not true at all. They believe that the figure we saw in that photo was just a very realistic looking statue, while others believe that it's a little too realistic to just be a statue. Some people who have family from that area that this took place in, they claim that this is a very true house was apparently used for multiple different things throughout its history. It was obviously someone's house at certain points, and the mansion's basement was used as a makeshift hospital during the Civil War, as well as a county jail. This house is almost 200 years old. It's seen a lot in its day, so it's not a surprise that people have reported much ghostly activity here, right? One of the most popular stories came from a caretaker who used to work at the mansion, right? She said that one day she came downstairs and she was met with a casket, a phantom casket. Laying inside this casket was a man who was wearing a Confederate Army uniform, but she didn't recognize him. She didn't know who he was. She later learned that Robert Batton, who lived in the house first, his funeral was actually held in the house. So she believed that that's who she saw laying there. Makes sense. And not only was his funeral held there, but they say that his mom was so distraught after his passing that she didn't want to have him buried either. She allegedly had his body put in one of the rooms in the basement, the mystery room. And they say that it wasn't just this son, but also a second son who was put in the mystery room. Let's talk about this mystery room though. So apparently this room is not even accessible. Apparently it has no entrance. Weird. The only way that you can actually see this room is by looking through a window from the outside of the mansion. Super weird. This room is the only one of its kind in the mansion. The rest of the rooms are normal. Apparently no one really knows what this mystery room was originally used for. It's just there, being a mystery. I'm also not sure exactly what you're able to see from the outside looking in. Like, I don't know if you're able to see caskets inside of there or what. I wasn't able to find that information. Anyway, in addition to the weirdness, several hauntings have been reported over the years. They say that there's a ghost named Billy who enjoys messing with the female staff and visitors. He's known to lock the door behind females whenever they enter a certain room so that they can't get out. Many people think he just does it as a joke, but that's absolutely terrifying, right? There have also been sightings of an apparition patrolling the outside of the property, and it's actually been caught on camera as well. They say that he's usually dressed in a Confederate Army uniform and he just kind of walks back and forth outside the property. This is supposedly someone who passed away on the property during the war, I guess. There have also been reports of doors moving on their own, sounds of children laughing even though there are no children present. In one incident, apparently a tile from the ceiling fell and was launched across the room by an unseen force. I should also mention that some type of black magic was being practiced at this mansion at some point in time, so there's really no telling what type of stuff is roaming around in that mansion. Just a whole lot of weird stuff happening. I'm gonna let you have it, okay? There's another mansion in Alabama that has some funny business going on as well. It's the Jimsonvane Mansion located in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. This mansion was built back in 1859 and it was owned by a man named Robert Jimson Jr. This mansion was very luxurious for its time. It was one of the very few places that you could find with running water, toilets that actually flushed, 26 different rooms, and even bathtubs wasn't injured.